So I want to get into some more specifics about how I got my first clients and what I learned that made it easier for me. So, one of the mistakes that I made early on was that I set up my own workshops. I set up a lot of workshops that were in person at the library, at community centers, at my office, wherever, and advertised those on my own via flyers and online listings and event listings, email blasts. I even did a couple of postcard mailers to houses in the right zip codes. And the problem with that is that you get no one to come. I had attendance that ranged from 30 or 40 people, which was a great workshop, to several where I just sat there for 15 minutes and then left because no one showed up. The reality is when you do your own workshop or seminar, you are taking on the responsibility of delivering the content as well as recruiting the attendees. And so one of the lessons I learned is to get rid of the responsibility of attracting the attendees. And the way I did that was I reached out to the leaders of local organizations. I recall working with a realtors group who would host real estate agents in the local area once a month for sharing tips and tricks to help realtors. And when I was talking to the current president of this group, she had mentioned that many realtors have the problem of working with people who don't have good enough credit to buy a house. And I mentioned, what if I come and I do a presentation about 5 ways to raise your credit score over 90 days? And they can take that information and share it with the prospects, but they can also refer people that maybe aren't in a position to buy a house to me so that I can work with them and send them back to those realtors. And that was a great relationship because now I wasn't recruiting people to come to these events. All I had to do was show up with my materials, and then I was given some time to present to them. And I made a lot of great connections. And you're in front of a lot of people who are going to be there anyway. And so you aren't trying to RSVP people and looking at registration sheets and wondering if anyone will actually show up, and then trying to entice them with food or drinks. Another one was working with a group of pastors who would counsel new couples before they got married. And they would counsel these couples over the course of a few months, and they would cover different topics. And I offered to cover the evening session where they would talk about finances. And the pastors loved it because it was an hour that they could get back to their day. It was an hour of time with these couples that they could offload to an expert and get them better advice, experience, and guidance, and then still focus on the topics that they really wanted to cover. And I did this with a number of organizations, from artists to tradesmen to auto mechanics to factory workers, working with groups that were bringing people together already. And so that's how I would recommend doing workshops. Don't set them up on your own, because you're going to find that it's actually really difficult, not necessarily to find people who are interested, but who are interested enough that they are going to get off their butt and go somewhere and sit around with a bunch of strangers with a presenter that they don't know and take time out of their day and their schedule to do that. Most people have great intentions and they will sign up, and most people won't actually ever show up. So leverage the power and the scale of working with leaders of organizations in your area to do workshops that provide a lot of value. Now, let me tell you, this does have a drawback. If you are going to do your own workshop and you are going to have people come and sign up and listen to you talk about the 5 mistakes that most people make when claiming Social Security, or whatever workshop title you want to do, many times you can have half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour to do that presentation. That's because you're setting it up and there's only one topic. When you go out to these organizations and work with them, they usually have other topics in that meeting time that they need to cover themselves. And so they cannot give you the full time. They may give you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. Probably about 10 to 15 minutes is pretty typical. A lot of times they will promise you 10 minutes, But if you are really engaging, they will let you run for another 5. And this is where I have talked about presentations that are numbered. The top 5 mistakes first-time homebuyers make. The top 10 things that you need to do to reduce your insurance costs.